evening and welcome to Horror Historian. My name is Amanda and tonight we'll be discussing the 2011 Japanese supernatural film, Ring of Curse. The actual correct translation of the movie is I'm Sorry, which I think fits the theme a little bit better, but I'm not in charge of the marketing.
The director of this movie is Mari Asato. She has also directed Ju-on, Black Ghost, and Fatal Frame, two movies that I know I've been wanting to see but haven't actually gotten around to. Basically, Asato has the makings of a horror icon if these are her movies to reference. At the time of this movie's release, the stars were from the idol group Buono. They are Abe Suzuki, Miyabi Nasuyaki, and Momoko Tsunaga. They're all still mostly focused on music, even after Buono split up. Trigger warnings for child neglect and terminal illness.
The movie opens with Yuka Hidaka introducing herself and some of her classmates. She pays particular attention to a girl named Kurohane. She is an award-winning talent in writing, but she is a little weird, very disinterested in interacting with fellow students, and she just doesn't seem to care that much about any of them, which is fair because a lot of them are assholes.
Recognizing her obvious writing ability, Hidaka invites Kurohane to join the school's writing club. It's an obvious suggestion. To Hidaka's surprise, Kurohane turns her down immediately. Following this interaction, Kurohane they don't really interact much for the first half of the movie. Hidaka respects her decision, and she is someone that she watches just from a distance. Sonata, the class president, publicly berates Kurohane for not having joined the rest of the class in gym. Instead, she had been studying. The lack of a teacher in the room is probably because when a student has terminal cancer, it's probably not a good idea to have them in gym class. Because yes, Kurohane does have terminal cancer. It's revealed much later, but you see hints. When the class was discussing what they were going to be doing for the school festival, it was suggested that they do a play. Hidaka had been hoping that she would be picked, desperately wanting her own writing abilities to be recognized. But she isn't considered. Instead, Kurohane is voluntold by Sonata. It's obvious that it's just a setup to torment her some more, something that Hidaka recognizes almost immediately.
Kurohane immediately starts to pour all of her attention into writing the script. She's driven by something more than just the bullying by Sonata and her friends. Hidaka admits that he doesn't have the courage to intervene and defend Kurohane when she is being bullied. And I can recognize that as something that happens pretty often in bullying situations where someone very popular will dislike someone and make it everyone's problem, but nobody wants to stand up because it's scary.
The first to read the unfinished draft is Mayuchi. She seems horrified and disturbed by the content, to the point where she starts to physically show that she is distressed. She seems to have a hard time breathing after reading. She rejects the script, saying that it isn't good enough for the school festival. Kurohane takes the comments on the chin, not seeming to care that much as she gets back to writing. Hidaka feels like something is wrong with Mayuchi, and it turns out to be entirely correct. It's announced the following day that Mayuchi had passed away during the night. No one thinks anything of it except for Hidaka. Or maybe it's just the fact that we are hearing her recollection of events. Hidaka remembers being suspicious about what happened. She comes to believe that Kurohane intends to use the script to get revenge against her cruel classmates. Hidaka's friend, Chiharu, is skeptical of that being the case. To the point that after the second person who reads the script and seems to have no reaction, Chiharu reads the script while it's sitting on their teacher's desk. But after Chiharu did, she ends up dying, solidifying that Kurohane is creating a curse. Hikaru falls into a depression after the death of her best friend and the suicide of her teacher, who was obviously reading the story and was the writing club's advisor. Kurohane continues writing with an intensity like her life depends on it.
Kurohane thinks that she's finally going to get what she was looking for when Sonata comes forward to read her script. She doesn't have any other friends that can go ahead and do it for her, so she has to take on the task. At this moment, Hidaka finally decides to stand up for someone. It just happens to be against Kurohane. He protects her bully. He tries to warn her, but Sonata just kind of mocks her in return.
Kurohane is not happy that Hidaka interfered. She isn't that surprised that someone put it together, though. It was evident that one of the students would put it together, although Sonata does not seem to grasp the gravity of the situation. She must have understood eventually, as she withdraws from the school soon after reading the script, not long after Hidaka lobbed that accusation. Kurohane confronts Hidaka in a quieter part of the school, confessing her motivations and how they ended up to this point. She became obsessed with finding out if words were able to kill someone, in a more literal way than just hurting feelings, something she is quite familiar with. She tells Hidaka that she had first attempted this with her younger sister, being the guinea pig. Obviously, they did not have a good relationship. It took a month for her sister to die from the curse, and she doesn't show a lot of remorse for having done it. If anything, it just seems that it was more inconvenient that it took so long. Her urgency in killing off her bullies comes from the fact that Kurohane is not going to survive the year. She has a limited amount of time to get her revenge, and Hidaka had just messed with her plans.
It looks for a brief moment that the curse has finally run its course and that Hidaka's world might finally be able to return to normal. However, that is destroyed when Hidaka learns that Kurohane had used her to get to Sonoda. She had impersonated Hidaka Impact and sent the curse along that way.
Hidaka is obviously disturbed by this information, but she's powerless to do anything when it has already been set into motion. But it gets so much worse when Sonata arrives to the school and begins to stab Kurohane with a frenzy that borders on surreal, while Hidaka can do nothing but sit there and watch it happen. The violence is pretty prolonged and extreme for a movie that had been pretty mild up until this point. Kurohane's blood is everywhere, and it's obviously that she is definitely not alive, and that she had put no effort into defending herself against her former classmate. Sonoda, when she finishes stabbing Kurohane into mincemeat, turns the knife onto herself and cuts her own throat. Hidaka is just stuck there, paralyzed by her shock. She's just sitting in the aftermath of the murder-suicide of two students. You're left there with a few seconds, and then we jump forward a year.
It becomes clear that Kurohane's mother was largely unmoved by her death, even going so far as to smile during the funeral. As for Hidaka, a package arrives for her from Kurohane. It is her diary. It explores all of her inner thoughts, and there's just like this profound sense of isolation when she's talking, one that started as a child where her nickname was Ghost.
The diary reveals that Kurohane had been emotionally abandoned by her mother when she was a young child. She had used her blood to write something down after having an issue with another student, and from that moment on, her sister was clearly the preferred child, something that both of the children were very aware of. Her sister's behavior, a mixture of arrogance and entitlement, only made Kurohane's feelings of neglect and resentment that much worse. One particular moment in the diary involves Kurohane gifting her mother a mug. Rather than using it herself, she would have guests use it, as though it wasn't good enough for her mother's use. She would end up taking the mug and breaking it until it was sand and then eating it. Other than self-harm, this seemed to be an extreme reaction to her own pain. Kurohane also takes a rather funny shot at Hidaka and her limitations as a writer. She just says that she lacks what it would take to become truly great and that she won't go far enough to get to that point.
After Kurohane's cancer diagnosis, she decides to curse her sister. It stemmed from the deep bitterness that she is the only one that has to suffer, while her sister gets kind of like to go through life easily.
Ultimately, Kurohane concludes that the only means by which she can continue to live is through the legacy of her curse. Her physical body may not be there, the curse becomes her final act of authorship, a way to inflict her suffering onto other people and make sure that she does not fade into nothing. This is all obviously upsetting to Hidaka, and she never reads the text that Kurohane had sent to her with the curse. She never deleted it either, though, so in a way she was keeping that threat of Kurohane alive. During the next school year, the legend of Kurohane and everything that happened to her is everywhere. The girls in Hidaka's class want to know everything. She makes the mistake of mentioning that she had been sent the curse and saying that she has never opened the text. The other girls are a lot less afraid of it than she is. Despite trying to warn them, she really doesn't do that much to try and stop them from stealing her phone. She's not working hard to try to end this curse, letting them read or at least look at the text that had been sent to her. She doesn't really work hard to stop them from showing her the text as well. I think she's cursed. I'm pretty sure she's cursed.
The other students in Hidaka's class start dying. The story starts making its way through the new classroom, and it's much easier to do now through texting. As it turns out, Kurohane's curse is different. So it doesn't affect every single person. It'll affect them randomly, which is how the second person who read the story survives till the next morning, but other people immediately have effects.
Hidaka writes a short story, and she includes the words that Kurohane had used to spread the curse. She then posted the short story online, knowing that it's going to go absolutely viral, and a lot of eyes are going to be on that screen. She does exactly what Kurohane had obviously been hoping to happen when she made the curse that easily accessible. Hidaka was buying herself time, hoping that she would not be the person that was randomly picked for death. Maybe proving that she did have what it took to become a great writer, because a lot of people are going to be sharing her story.
That movie is decent. I think it definitely drags things out in the beginning, and then the ending feels rushed. There were a few solutions that were teased, but it was either done by someone else off screen, or Hidaka just didn't do it. So we end up feeling very confined to a specific small area, and it creates limits, ones that they break a bit with the death of Kurohane, but not nearly as much as I would have liked.
I think having Hidaka write a counter curse would have been a really interesting way to finish things. Probably really boring, though. I do think that this is kind of a stereotypical way that these movies end. You have to pass it on, just like you did in The Ring or Truth or Dare. Two very different movies, but for some reason, those are the ones that popped in my head. And for that, I am sorry. For young women that were not working actresses at the time of this movie, I give them a lot of credit. I was surprised that they had the idols be the villains of the movie, and I certainly consider Kurohane and Sodana to be villains in their own right. Sodana is obvious. Kurohane, to an extent, although I'm much more sympathetic towards her due to extensive bullying and the cancer that I feel like is skipped over way too easily. Kurohane is played very well. I was surprised to see the actress because she looks extremely bubbly in comparison to the character. It was honestly kind of great.
Much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I would survive this movie no problem because I don't read cursed things. I just don't. I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry.